Shalom, my good brothers. I truly pray all is well with you and your families. Today, I want to talk about why it's difficult for me and many men, and maybe even yourself, to embrace the word vulnerable or vulnerability. This isn't about machismo or emotional suppression. This is about truth, definition, discernment, and application. A man recently told me that his therapist encouraged him to be vulnerable, and this happens often. But this man became very angry and said, "Mr. Wilson," and I'm going to keep it clean here. He says, "I ain't no B. I have a major issue with the word vulnerable. It conflicts with who I am as a man and my spirit." And I told him, brother, it should. Because a warrior spirit is not designed to seek vulnerability by the true essence of that word. No man should desire for himself or his family to be vulnerable or in a vulnerable position. See, the problem isn't the intention behind what his therapist said. The problem is the language. Most people today use vulnerability to mean emotional openness or transparency. But the actual definition of vulnerability means susceptible to danger, harm, or even death. Now think about that for a moment. Yah the Most High did not design man to desire to be susceptible to danger. He designed man to protect, to guard, to cover, to love, and to stand watch. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, it says, Adam was placed in the garden to work it and keep it. The Hebrew word shamar for keep means to guard or protect. In other words, Adam's dominion included responsibility and vigilance. His failure to address the serpent's deception wasn't a lack of authority, but a lapse in responsibility. And here's the deeper point. If the first man's assignment included guarding, then any command that invites a man to lower that guard must be weighed with great discernment and insight. The design must interpret the language, not the other way around. So how can man be both protector and seek to be susceptible to danger? It's a contradiction, my brothers, of Yah's spiritual design for us. One of the greatest tragedies of our generation is how words have become emptied of their meaning. Language has become emotional instead of accurate. And when words lose their meaning, men lose their clarity. And this isn't a matter of semantics. When you change a man's language, you change his categories. And when you change his categories, you change his behavior. Words are architecture. They build or they break. In other words, the mind organizes everything. What is safe versus what is unsafe? What is strong? What is weak? What is masculine versus what is feminine? And what is assertive versus what is passivity? These categories shape how a man thinks, reacts, and ultimately how he lives. So if the categories are wrong, the decisions that come from them will also be wrong. It's written in Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21, that life and death are in the power of the tongue. So when we confuse words like vulnerability with strength, we're not just miscommunicating, we're misdirecting men. We're speaking life where death belongs and death where life belongs. Because the human mind is shaped by categories. And when those categories are distorted, the behavior that flows from them are as well. Again, let's take the idea that vulnerability equals strength. A man's psychological and biological design has, for thousands of years, associated vulnerability with threat, with exposure to danger. So when he's told that vulnerability is a virtue, yet his nervous system interprets it as risk, you create internal chaos, emotional conflict, rational instability, and confusion about the path Yah intended him to walk. When you call transparency vulnerability, you're not simply using the word wrong. You're distorting the very framework that guides a man's behavior, his identity, and his sense of purpose. And when the framework collapses, the person following it also collapses with it. So when men are told, be vulnerable, what they hear subconsciously is lower your defenses and become susceptible to harm. And the spirit of a protector will always resist that. Now, please don't swerve on what I'm saying. There is nothing wrong with being emotionally open. I've written 3 books about it so far. There is nothing wrong with crying or confessing or expressing the pain you've carried for years. But that's not vulnerability. That's transparency. Actually, I call it courageous transparency. A man who opens up his heart after betrayal isn't being vulnerable. He's being strong. A man who seeks help for his trauma isn't weak. He's actually wise. A man who admits he's broken isn't exposed. He's started healing. The culture has mislabeled transparency as vulnerability. And that's why so many men recoil when they hear the word. It doesn't resonate with who they are designed to be. If you study psychology, you'll understand why many men have evolved to associate vulnerability with death. In ancestral environments, the male who dropped his guard often didn't live to see another day. Vulnerability in the literal sense meant exposure to predators or enemies. And the nervous system remembers what the culture forgets. Your biology carries ancient warnings, even when your vocabulary has been modernized. So when modern psychology tells a man, be vulnerable, but his nervous system still interprets that as danger, you're setting up an internal conflict between his design and his development. That's why I tell men, don't be vulnerable, be transparent. Vulnerability says, you can wound me. Transparency says, you can see through me while I show you who I really am. Even Yahushua wasn't vulnerable on the cross. He was obedient. He chose sacrifice, not susceptibility. For it is written that he said that no one takes my life from me, but I lay it down of myself. There's a difference between laying your life down willingly and having it taken from you because you dropped your guard. Brothers, we must reclaim comprehensive manhood. We don't need to be vulnerable. We need to be transparent. We don't need to be fragile. We need to be faithful. We need to be stable. A man who cries but still stands firm is not vulnerable. He's victorious. A man who admits his fear but still moves forward is not weak. He's courageous. So when we correct the language, we correct the confusion. So now, when you hear someone tell you, be vulnerable, don't reject the heart behind it. Just reframe the language. What they meant to say is, be authentic, be emotionally open, be transparent. That's what fosters healing and connection. But understand, being vulnerable, susceptible to danger, is the opposite of what leads to healing. Because transparency is what builds trust, but vulnerability invites an attack. Therefore, when a man says, I can't afford to be vulnerable, what he's really saying is, I can't afford to be unguarded. And that's a valid truth. So brothers, as you continue to escape emotional incarceration, remember this: your heart was never meant to be unguarded. For it is written in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23, above all else, guard your heart with all vigilance, for from it flows the springs of life. So my brothers, guard your heart by not being vulnerable, but don't hoard it by not being transparent. Share it wisely with humans, but offer it to Yah, the Most High, fully, because he's the only one who can handle it without hurting it. As always, I hope this video encouraged you. If you would like to be notified when I upload another one, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. But if you're ready to go deeper, if you want to be trained by me and walk shoulder to shoulder with a community of brothers seeking to become comprehensive men, then join my Patreon Brotherhood. The link is below in the description. Until next time, my brothers, keep growing, keep building, and keep striving to be the man the moment demands. Shalom.